Today, breaking news: Ukraine is facing one of the most dangerous moments of the war, so far as Russia and Belarus appear to be tightening the noose from multiple directions, raising fears of a new phase that could reshape the entire conflict and drag the region into deeper instability. Over the past weeks, military movements near Ukraine's northern borders have accelerated, with Russian forces increasing coordination with Belarusian units, logistics hubs becoming more active, and joint drills sending a clear message that pressure on Kyiv is far from over. For Ukraine, this is not just about troops on a map, but about survival, strategy, and time as the country continues to defend long front lines while dealing with exhaustion, resource strain, and uncertainty about how far the conflict may spread. Russia's approach has evolved from rapid advances to a slower, grinding strategy focused on attrition, aiming to stretch Ukrainian defenses, weaken morale, and exploit any political or military fatigue among Ukraine's supporters. Belarus plays a crucial role in this equation, not necessarily by launching a full invasion, but by offering territory, infrastructure, airspace, and constant psychological pressure that forces Ukraine to keep large numbers of troops tied down in the north. Every movement inside Belarus forces Ukraine to react, reinforcing borders, shifting units, and preparing for threats that may never fully materialize but still drain precious resources. From Moscow's perspective, this strategy is efficient as it creates uncertainty without the immediate costs of a full-scale attack, while still keeping Ukraine on edge and limiting its ability to concentrate forces elsewhere. At the same time, Russia continues to strike critical infrastructure across Ukraine, targeting energy systems, transportation routes, and industrial sites in an effort to weaken the country from within and disrupt daily life. These attacks are not random, but part of a broader attempt to undermine economic stability, increase civilian hardship, and pressure Ukrainian leadership during a prolonged war of endurance. Ukraine's air defense systems have improved, but they remain under constant stress as missiles and drones continue to test their limits night after night. On the ground, fierce fighting persists in eastern and southern regions where Russian forces push slowly, village by village, seeking tactical gains that can later be presented as strategic victories. Ukrainian soldiers face relentless combat conditions, often holding positions under heavy fire while rotating units struggle to recover from months of continuous engagement. Despite these challenges, Ukrainian resistance remains strong, driven by a sense of national survival and reinforced by battlefield experience gained over years of conflict. However, the growing cooperation between Russia and Belarus introduces a new layer of risk, especially if Moscow decides to open or simulate a northern front to stretch Ukrainian defenses even thinner. A renewed threat from the north would not necessarily mean tanks rolling immediately toward Kyiv, but could involve missile launches, sabotage operations, or sudden troop deployments designed to create chaos and confusion. For civilians, this uncertainty is deeply unsettling, as communities near the border live under the constant fear of escalation without knowing when or how it might come. Internationally, the situation is being watched with increasing concern, as any major expansion of the war could have ripple effects across Europe and beyond. NATO countries are closely monitoring developments in Belarus, aware that even indirect involvement could shift regional security dynamics and raise the stakes of the conflict. Western support for Ukraine remains critical, but political debates, economic pressures, and competing global crises have complicated long-term commitments. For Ukraine, the question is not just whether support continues, but whether it arrives quickly enough and in sufficient quantity to counter new threats. Weapons, ammunition, and air defense systems are essential, but so is training, intelligence sharing, and diplomatic backing to deter further escalation. Russia, meanwhile, calculates that time may be on its side, betting that prolonged conflict will weaken Ukraine's allies and reduce their willingness to sustain costly assistance. Belarus's leadership walks a careful line, balancing loyalty to Moscow with concerns about domestic stability and the risks of being drawn directly into the war. While Belarusian forces have not launched a large-scale assault, their involvement behind the scenes has been significant, making the country an indispensable partner in Russia's strategy. This partnership allows Russia to threaten Ukraine's northern flank at will, keeping Kiev guessing and forcing constant vigilance. The psychological impact of this pressure cannot be underestimated, as uncertainty itself becomes a weapon, shaping decisions and draining morale. Ukraine's leadership faces difficult choices, balancing the need to defend every potential front with the reality of limited manpower and resources. Strategic prioritization becomes crucial, as spreading forces too thin could invite breakthroughs, while concentrating them could leave other areas vulnerable. At the same time, Ukraine must manage the expectations and resilience of its population, maintaining unity and determination in the face of prolonged hardship. Economic strain continues to mount as industries struggle, exports face disruptions, and reconstruction remains a distant goal amid ongoing attacks. Energy infrastructure remains a key target, especially during colder months when disruptions can have severe humanitarian consequences. Ukraine's ability to repair damage quickly has improved, but repeated strikes aim to overwhelm repair crews and erode public confidence. Russia's messaging emphasizes inevitability and endurance, portraying the conflict as a long struggle that Ukraine cannot win without unbearable costs. Ukraine counters this narrative by highlighting resilience, adaptability, and the moral dimension of defending sovereignty against aggression. Information warfare plays a major role, with both sides seeking to shape international opinion and domestic morale through media and messaging. Social media amplifies every development, turning troop movements and battlefield rumors into global talking points within hours. For ordinary Ukrainians, life continues under the shadow of war, as people work, study, and care for families, while air raid sirens and power outages remain part of daily reality. This normalization of danger reflects remarkable resilience, but also underscores the heavy psychological toll of a conflict with no clear end in sight. The tightening coordination between Russia and Belarus raises fears that the war could enter a more unpredictable phase, where sudden escalations become more likely. Even without a formal declaration of new offensives, the constant threat forces Ukraine to remain in a defensive posture, limiting opportunities for strategic breakthroughs. From a military standpoint, Russia's approach seeks to exhaust rather than overwhelm, turning the conflict into a test of endurance and logistics. Belarus's role enhances this strategy by expanding the geographic scope of potential threats without requiring massive additional forces. For Ukraine, the challenge is to maintain flexibility, readiness, and morale, while preparing for multiple scenarios simultaneously. Diplomatic efforts continue behind the scenes, but prospects for meaningful negotiations remain distant, as both sides believe time and pressure could improve their positions. Global attention fluctuates, but the human cost of the war continues to rise with each passing month. Civilian casualties, displacement, and trauma remain defining features of the conflict, shaping Ukraine's future long after the fighting ends. The question now is whether Ukraine can withstand this tightening pressure while sustaining the support and unity needed to continue resisting. Russia and Belarus may believe they are closing in, but Ukraine has repeatedly defied expectations, adapting to challenges and refusing to collapse. The coming months will be critical as military decisions, international support, and domestic resilience intersect in ways that could determine the next chapter of the war. Whether this tightening noose becomes a decisive turning point or another test Ukraine manages to survive remains uncertain. What is clear is that the stakes are higher than ever, and the path ahead is fraught with danger, sacrifice, and difficult choices for all involved. As Russia and Belarus tighten their coordination, Ukraine stands at a crossroads, facing immense pressure yet continuing to fight for its sovereignty and future. The world watches closely, knowing that the outcome of this struggle will shape not only Ukraine's destiny, but the security landscape of an entire region for years to come.